Stephen, we've done 4 sessions now and 2 to go. Lots for people to take in and lots to land the fish in the next 2 sessions. And since some people will be waiting a week till the next one, it might be worth just saying what the 4 sessions so far have set them up for and what the next 2 are going to do.
Sure, that's a great idea. And before we're done on our last session today, please remind me, I have a special offer. I know it sounds very commercial to make to the folks that make it through all 6 of these, but I do a 6-hour series of this, Richard, and it's normally $75 for the video and the notes. And I'm going to make a very one-time only offer when we're all done. So remind me on the 6th session before we're done. But where we've been, we kind of did 2 sessions opening up in the sense of how does God self-reveal himself? Doesn't mean Israel understood him as he was revealed. As a matter of fact, we know that Israel didn't understand him based on John 1:18. No one at any time has ever properly understood God, but Jesus Christ has come to make him openly known. So just because God reveals himself a certain way does not mean that Israel got it. The 2nd session, we went over a collective worldview. The first session was kind of how God expresses himself to humanity multi-generationally and collectively. The 2nd session dealt with the earthbound side of things, how the people in the 1st century viewed human social relationships collectively. Individualism was a 17th century phenomena, did not exist, and to this day in some parts of the world doesn't exist. Sessions 3 and 4, we took up the idea of sin and tried to redefine it relationally rather than criminally. And I can't overemphasize how much and how important that is. And this would be a good time to very quickly add a postscript to the 4th session, just to help clarify again the difference in worldview between their worldview of sin and justice and our worldview of sin and justice. So I'm going to take advantage of this time to do it quickly. The metaphor in our world for justice is normally the blind lady with the scales, right? Sword in one hand, scales in the other. Constitutionally, that is a metaphor for precision. It's either right or wrong, and everything has to be balanced, and the sword of punishment. There's nothing restorative in the Western worldview of justice as typically represented in metaphor by that very image. It's all about precision. Here's the standard. You either measure up to it. If you don't, you're punished. And if you do, you're safe. And there's a sword to punish. Amos, I believe, describes God's justice this way, and it's beautiful. He says, let justice flow like a mighty river. The metaphor is one of something that is not static. The metaphor is something that is fluid, that is moving, that can't be contained, that cannot be defined, that cannot be categorized. And it's just a very simple, real quick little picture for you to try to get through to you how different our world is from their world in terms of how they see things functioning. And I'm here to tell you that their idea of justice in the sense of the prophetic tradition would be very different than ours. And we're going to wrap things up today. We're doing 2 sessions on honor and shame, and really trying to wrap this up home. Again, reminder, we're trying to do in 6 20-minute sessions what I normally do in 6 hours. By definition, I can't cover every wrinkle and every question and every yeah, but what, this, that. Can't happen in this format. So that's why when we're done, for those that want to take a deeper dive, I'm going to make an offer for you. But let's talk about honor and shame. In our world of individual subjectivity, those are both inner feelings that we have. Honor is a feeling of respect that I might have to someone or something, and shame is an inner feeling of inferiority, inadequacy, insufficiency, worthlessness. Notice that they're all individual and inward. That is not how those terms were understood in the time of Jesus and Paul. Both of those were commodities of substance. That's the best way to describe it. Commodities with substance, and they were finite, and they were prescribed by God. And to go outside the boundaries of what was prescribed by God was dishonorable and sinful. Think about it. We mentioned earlier, they're looking around at nature, and everything has a limit. The sky has a limit, the land has a limit. Birds fly in the sky, that's their limit. Fish swim in the ocean, that's their limit. Horses run on the ground, that's their limit. They view that as divinely prescribed. And the way you give glory and honor to God is not by carrying on in a praise and worship service and extolling this and that. You extol the fact that he has made those limiting prescriptions of honor. You are extol his wisdom in doing so. And that makes sense of Jesus's statement where he says, I only do what I see my Father doing. My Father has prescribed a certain limit for my function on this planet, and I don't go outside of those limits. To go outside of those limits is to be shameful, because it's a statement against God's predeterminations of how the universe is supposed to work. And that's another reason why yeast, it can be used as a positive or a negative metaphor in their world. And the negative metaphor for yeast, why is yeast? What's the importance of unleavened bread? Why yeast? Think about it based on what I just said. Yeast is something that influences something else to go outside its boundaries. You put the dough in the pan, there's the boundaries of the dough. You add yeast, and what does yeast do? It goes outside its boundaries. It also makes sense out of the exhortation about beware of the leaven or the yeast of the Pharisees. What does that mean? Because we are so inculcated with doctrinalitis, we think that means bad teaching. No, 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 no. Beware of the grab that they are making and the statements they are making of themselves for grabbing a portion that is not theirs to grab. They are going outside of the boundaries. And when it refers to Torah, they are adding oral traditions. You are putting weights on the people, all those admonitions, because they are not functioning within a God-ordained boundary. And so that's another example of why yeast can take on a negative metaphor. And when I was growing up, it never made sense to me why, the bread must be unleavened. That's because of how they understood yeast to influence, make things go outside what they're prescribed to go to. Therefore, and we've said this earlier, if you're born the son of a tailor and you stay the son of a tailor, that gives glory to God. Because God had you born in that family, you stay in that family, you become a tailor because God has ordained it. Now that is contrary, totally contrary to our worldview, because in our worldview believes in innovation, creativity, and expansion. Folks, we need to understand that is really, at best, a 200-year-old invention in the human experience. See, we are creative. We think we give glory. Let's invent something. Let's make something bigger, and better and more expensive and this and that. And we give glory to God's creativity, or at least the old school scientists, the 18th, 17th century scientists, even Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, Galileo. During the Renaissance, they believed they were giving God glory by coming to greater understandings that were going outside of prescribed limits. And to this day, the latter thing that I just said is exactly the way that you live and that I live. We need to understand that when we approach the scriptures, the last 3 minutes of what I just said did not apply. They would consider what the last 3 minutes of what I just said sinful, because we are going against what they believe was God's predeterminations. Now, the other thing, and you see this in the scriptures also, particularly regarding sin, is its contaminating effect socially. Sin was considered a contaminant, right? The lepers had to be separate because of its negative effect on the community. And having that contaminant affect the community would be dishonorable. Short version of literally hours that we could do on this. Anything that added the substance of honor to the group, the family, the clan, the tribe, the people group, was considered a loving, good, honorable thing. Anything that diminished, you know what the good English word would be? Status. See, it's not about a feeling, it's about status. And your status determined your place. See, so if God has predetermined you to be the son of a tailor, and that is your place, and that is God's place, the rest of society knows where you belong. And therefore, society is ordered. And as long as everybody stays in their place, everything's fine. And that's why Jesus was a troublemaker. It's not just because of his teaching, because he was his very, it isn't even what he was doing or teaching. It is, he is upsetting the cosmos as they understood it. His very existence, his claims of personhood, not as deity, not as Messiah, but the fact that he was from a despised city, born of a despised race. I know the Jews wouldn't feel that way about themselves, but Jews were despised. And doing these great things was incongruous. And basically, you, Mr. Bastard from Nazareth, that's literally what John chapter 8 said, do not have the honor of acting this way. You do not have that status. And the only way you get that status is, if you can imagine it, bribery and corruption is if, like Don Corleone, you kiss up and you pay, or you get connected to somebody with power who grants you status, or the community itself grants you status. And so honor and shame is how their world worked. It's how their system of life worked. I don't have time to get into some of the things that we would if we had the full 6 hours. Their economic system wasn't like ours. You didn't go to a bank and get a loan. The temple was where the money was. They were in cahoots with Rome. And if you didn't have a pathway of privilege to somebody with power, you're not getting the money. You can't work to get ahead. There is no getting ahead. If you don't kiss up to somebody who's already ahead, you are stuck in life, in your place in life, and that is where you belong, because God has willed it. Who has sinned, this man or his parents? You see the quid pro quo lot in life idea. And for us, it's not only hard to understand, but hard to understand that a people would think that God himself has prescribed the universe that way. And one of the beauties of unpacking John 1:18 is one of the reasons Jesus came is to make that corrective in their understanding of his Father. How does he do it? He talks to the ultimate outgroup person, Samaritans, the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the dishonorable. And some rabbis believed that Samaritans were constitutionally created by God as defiled. Has nothing to do with their behavior. See, we don't get that because for us, it's all about our behavior. No, 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 no. Some of the rabbis believe that Gentiles were designed and created by God to be constitutionally unclean and unredeemable. It is their lot and space in life. They are unclean. Just like there are unclean animals that God has decreed, and there are clean animals. And that's why the whole sheep dream of Peter is such a big deal. We Christianize that story of Peter and, the clean and the unclean animals, and we think it's about getting our soul saved. We don't understand that Peter's whole world was being blown up. Imagine somebody coming to you and saying aeronautics isn't true, gravity isn't true, aerospace is a lie, physics is a lie. Everything you've ever learned was not true. That is the kind of impact that was happening to Peter when that sheet was being dropped down to him. The world doesn't work the way you think it does, Peter, and the way all your peers and your parents, it gets worse, because now it means your parents were wrong, your grandparents were wrong, your great-grandparents are wrong. And how important is that? Remember the 3 G's? What determines your honor status? Your genealogy, your geography, and your gender. Now, for Peter, now his genealogy is also being assaulted, because now that means my parents were all wrong. And so the teachings of Jesus were socially an upheaval that we cannot comprehend. Let's say I'm struggling for metaphors in our world. And I'll just use American metaphors because that's my universe. The closest I can get for European friends or English friends. That's the Magna Carta. It's a fraud. Never happened. Constitution, fraud. Never happened. Declaration of Independence, fraud. Never happened. That is the impact that the teachings of Jesus had on their honor, shame, culture. And it's very interesting because sometimes in his life, you will see him operating within that honor shame system. Sometimes you will see him challenging the honor shame system. And sometimes you will see him ignoring the honor shame system, because pre-resurrection is kind of like this in-between existence. So all I want to drive home today in this session is that honor was a finite substance, had nothing to do with a feeling in your heart towards an individual, had nothing to do with your feelings of inadequacy or not. It was all about the community. God has prescribed a certain honor for you. That honor is held, administered, and allocated by the community. If the community does not grant you a piece of their finite honor pie, you don't get any. Period. Now, that's ideal, and here's where it gets murky. like most systems, including our own political systems and social systems, guess what happens? It gets corrupted. And you could cheat the system by buying your way into honor, by lying your way into honor, by kissing up to Caesar the way Herod the Great did, by flipping. Herod the Great was actually on the losing side of those Roman civil wars, and he just flipped. And he said, hey, you know how badly I fought for the side that just lost? I'll fight that hard for you. And boom, now I think he joins Mark Antony or Octavius, whoever it was. He lost, or Josephus lost. One of them, I can't remember, getting my history mixed up. I think it was Herod, yeah. My point is, we cannot bring Western presuppositions about even simple terms, honor, shame, love, hate, faith, trust, sin, cannot bring those Western presuppositions into the text and just go from the page to our life. We have to do good study, good Bible work, back it down and make sure we know what we're talking about and make these differentiations. Is this something that was limited to their world? Is this something that can be adapted to our world? Or is it something that under no circumstances is ever going to fit our world? And we have to do that kind of work. Their entire, I'll wrap it up with this. Just imagine a society that by design and believed by divine design was run like Don Corleone's mafioso family. They believed that. And God was the Godfather in the sky. And you give him appropriate honor and glory and whatever, and the goodies fall to heaven, just like many a charismatic belief system today. So that is a 20-minute intro of intros, a piece of an intro into the depths of how honor and shame operated in the society in which Jesus, Paul, and the disciples lived. I will see you the next time.